Cast your votes this Thursday, September 3, 2020. You hold the future of the nation in your finger. The power of the vote. Every vote counts. You matter, and you have a say in this election. COVID elections 2020. Jamaica votes during a global pandemic. Uncertainty lingers. Global recession looms. We're a nation in crisis. One party is touting recovery, and the other party is touting rescue. We've had over 1,000 confirmed cases of COVID-19 since the first imported case on March 10, 2020. The recent spike in cases is attributed to the reopening of our airspace, obviously for economic reasons. The country has had to make a choice, everybody. If we lock down the country for a long period of time to flatten the curve, we would be totally locking down our economy. Despite the country being open though, COVID has had an economically deleterious impact on us, and it has led to redundancies in many sectors. The collapse of the tourism industry, especially in Western Jamaica. This is a very sad state of affairs. And this is the reason why the Prime Minister had told us in July that elections were far from his mind.
It is all about the economy, and I am trying my best to make sure that there are no slips in that regard. As soon as I have sorted that out, then I will put on my track shoes. We'll do a quick little sprint.
A quick little sprint. Well, we're sprinting now. So in light of the PM's July view that fixing the economy should come before any election, the alarming local COVID spike, and the fact that we're not constitutionally due to go to the polls until February 2021, there are several questions on the lips of the Jamaican people. Firstly, should the September 3rd election have been called at all in the midst of this pandemic? Here's one take on it.
First thing, him shouldn't call the election in a this pandemic, yeah, because all the other can do this in a corona season. Yeah. If you do that, you know, so you're going to knuckle the place and more. And this bandwagon thing, yeah, it not going to work out. Because the people them don't know if to keep social distance. Honestly, to God.
I feel that the government should have sit back a little and pray the thing a little more, because it's all about our safety, you know.
As far as me see it with the COVID, I think the election could have stayed until even February. Make the place, I could see what they're going with the COVID, if we can get it down inside going up, because I think it go rise and kill off a lot of people.
When asked why the election was called at this time, earlier than constitutionally due in light of our negative economic situation, this is what the Minister of Health, Dr. Christopher Tufton, had to say.
I'm not going to attempt to read the Prime Minister's mind. What I will say, though, is that the Constitution of the country does allow an election to be called within a particular period. Of course, we know when it's constitutionally due, 5 years after the previous elections. And I think the Prime Minister is well within his right to exercise his mandate or his authority to call at any point. So, you know, I would leave it at that. He has done so, and he has done so within the laws of the country.
There's also a school of thought that elections should be postponed in light of the most recent spike and that the country should be shut down totally. But as the Prime Minister said,
Closing our borders for an extended period is not one that is feasible. It is not. We would be cutting off our nose despite our face.
the hard fact is that we're going to have to learn to live with COVID. We have to live with it. Despite the global pandemic and the economy being in recession, some people seem to feel that it's been business as usual, and many Jamaicans have just thrown caution to the wind and dumped the social distancing thing altogether.
Do you want to be that guy? Do you want to be this guy?
There's also a view that the regulations have facilitated this lax kind of behavior since up to last week, dance till a keep, and politicians did their dance. So relaxed COVID regulations have allowed gatherings of up to 250 people. Quite a few persons have suggested that the political COVID scare, which led to 2 JLP candidates being in isolation on nomination day awaiting COVID tests, was because of the loosening of the regulations. Another loophole, which to some puts the country and all of us at risk, is the fact that business visitors do not have to quarantine and are not tested upon arrival. Risky business. So, in the light of all of this 2020 chaos, many of the pundits believe that the general election will have the lowest voter turnout in the history of Jamaica, aside from the 1983 election boycott. And so naturally, the next question is, how many eligible voters will indeed come out to vote? Will they be voting at all, or are they going to be apathetic?
There's no social distance, so I don't think I'll be voting in this COVID-19 situation.
And another question, why did the government, in light of the most recent COVID spike, think that there was no better time than now, right now, to go to the polls? Lastly, and most importantly, what are the precautions being taken to keep our electorate safe? Well, you're going to be in great luck. You are in great luck. After the break, Glasspole Brown, the Director of Elections, will be joining us. We're going to take a quick one. Don't move a muscle.
One of our most prized departments is our lumber treatment plant. It is one of the most modern and state-of-the-art treatment facilities for lumber in the entire Caribbean. Our lumber is bought in raw form. They are then carefully loaded into a pressurized cylinder where it is treated with special chemicals. After the internal treatment process is completed, the lumber is transferred from the cylinder to the drip pad where it sits to be naturally dried. Our plant has the capacity to treat 50 million board feet of lumber annually. Not only do we treat our own lumber, we also offer lumber treatment to our valued customers.
Welcome back to Hardline with me, Ashley Ann. The right questions always. In preparation for the polls, the Electoral Office of Jamaica crafted COVID-19 rules for the elections. Accordingly, we should see strict social distancing and sanitization. To tell us more about these guidelines, we are now joined by the Director of Elections, Mr. Glasspole Brown. Mr. Brown, thank you for sitting with us.
Good to be with you.
Now, we're told that there are some new guidelines in light of the fact that we're going to the polls in the middle of a pandemic. Originally, the Prime Minister had said that he was going to focus on economic recovery. But here we are today going to the polls on September 3rd. In response, we had heard that the ECJ would not be prepared until 2021. Are you ready now, sir?
We have been preparing and we are ready. We have completed a number of activities. So we are ready. We are now preparing now for election on September 3rd. We should be ready.
That's very, very commendable. And the entire country is watching to see how the ECJ executes. And so far, it seems the opinions have been that the ECJ has done a great job. But outside of the polling station, we see mass carnivals, we see persons in breach of the social distancing rules. Will the ECJ have an input in that? Will you be reining in the candidates and their supporters?
Now, that's an issue that the Ombudsman would have to deal with. Certainly, our remit is to ensure in terms of what happens within the polling station. That's where our impact would be. And as such, we have put in a number of initiatives, or we're taking a number of initiatives, certainly in terms of we have signed off on a COVID-19 protocol with the Ministry of Health. There's some tweaking that needs to be done. We continue discussion with Ministry of Health as we do that. Suffice to say, though, there's a protocol in place which we hope to roll out on election day. Are conscious of the fact that we need to do whatever we need to do, certainly from EOJ's end, to at least try and protect our electors, not just on an individual basis, but the entire electors who will turn up on the day.
Okay, now can you paint a picture? What can the voter expect from the EOJ perspective? And then after that, could you please walk us through, as a voter, we go through what happens, tell us.
All right. As I said earlier on, our impact will be more so at the voting location. So what will happen, and you're gonna see it a little bit different this year from what happened in previous election, is that we have brought on board a group of persons known as the sanitization team. So when an elector enters that location, not the entrance, you'll be greeted by a group of persons. These individuals will be, as I said before, we have given them the title sanitization team. You'll be greeted at the gate in terms of, they will ensure that you have an mask. After you enter that gate, your hands will be sanitized, and then you will be ushered into the different polling stations. When you enter the different polling station, what will happen is that the presiding officer will issue certain instruction. And a part of that instruction that the presiding officer will ask you to just temporarily, for a few seconds, to remove your mask for he or she to identify you. After that process is completed, then the presiding officer will ask you to put back your mask. Presiding officer will then give you certain instruction. Go through the process, indicating to you how the different options on the ballot, etc., and guide you into the process of marking that ballot. He or she will then hand to you the ballot along with a pencil. In other words, in the past, what used to happen is that the pencil normally would have been tied to the voting booth. We're going to do it differently this year. Everybody will use a separate pencil, a separate sanitized pencil, that is. And then you will be ushered behind the voting booth for you to go and make a decision in terms of which of the candidate you are supporting. Having done that now, you will then return to the presiding officer. Then the presiding officer will instruct you to put the pencil that you used to mark the ballot in a box. What will happen is that the pencil will then be re-sanitized by a member of the sanitization team, and then the presiding officer will continue his or her process. And that process entails you dipping your finger in ink. What we'll be doing as an additional feature again is to ask you to re-sanitize your finger or your digit before you actually immerse that finger or digit in the ink. Suffice to say though, the ink is alcohol-based, and also it has certain chemical features that prevent the transmission of any infection.
Okay. Now, a lot of persons are concerned about the long lines. We always have a problem with how quickly we get in and out to mark our ballots. Now, with COVID and the sanitization teams and social distancing, how much longer do you think we'll have to wait to cast our ballots?
We are encouraging persons to stagger their time. So rather than everybody coming to cast their ballot between 7 and 10, if they're able to come a little bit later during the course of the day. Bear in mind that the process starts at 7 a.m. and lasts up to 5 p.m.
Okay, a lot of persons are concerned as well about the disabled and the elderly. Now, will there be any mechanisms in place to make it easier for those persons to vote in light of the pandemic?
Are putting in place an arrangement whereby an elderly person that comes to whenever that elderly person comes to the voting station or the polling station, what will happen? Our supervisor will seek to usher them to the front of the line. The idea here is to get them in and out of that polling station as quick as possible. And we appeal to the other electors who might be in a line when in that situation to understand and to be very understanding in the sense that we want to get our elderly person or the elderly voter out of the system, out of the location as quick as possible. So we will be seeking to, through our supervisors, as soon as that person enters the gate, usher them to the front of the line and so as to get them into the polling station as quick as possible.
The media, we are told that the media might be barred from entering the polling stations. Is that so?
We placed some amount of restriction on the number of persons that were allowed into the polling station in the nomination center. As such, we sought to, and we had put in place a designated area for the media to do their interview, to take their photograph, etc. We're looking to fine-tune it a little bit better, certainly for election day, and that arrangement is under discussion. So there's no intention, certainly from the EOJ, ECJ, to bar the media from witnessing the process.
And the securing of the ballot box, finally, is there any cause for concern? Because normally 2 representatives are present in the transportation vehicle, correct? Now, will that still be in place?
that process is in place. We're looking at to ensure that the vehicles that we select can be able to accommodate them, because there's a protocol in terms of the number of persons that ought to be in those vehicles. And then I remember in most of the cases, or significant amount of the cases, the police will accompany the ballot, so therefore they will be in their own transportation. There's added security there, certainly the JCF and the JDF will assist in the process.
Thank you. You know, we always have to check on that because the ballot is what counts. Okay, after the break, we will be joined by the Jamaica Labour Party's Minister without Portfolio in the Ministry of National Security, Senator Matthew Samuda, and the People's National Party's First Vice President, Senator Damion Crawford. Don't move an inch. We're coming right back at you. Welcome back to Hardline. We're now joined by the Jamaica Labour Party's Minister without Portfolio in the Ministry of National Security, Senator Matthew Samuda, and the People's National Party's First Vice President, Senator Damion Crawford. Now we're going to discuss the organization of readiness, the state of readiness of both political parties in this COVID election. Now, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. What is the feeling? What is the atmosphere on the ground right now?
I think the feeling is strong, certainly on the Jamaica Labour Party side. I think thus far we're happy with the feedback we're getting from the field. The numbers are coming back in a way that gives us some comfort. We're certainly not over the hill. You have to work until 5 p.m. September 3rd, guarantee that you are in that position. But I mean, we're engaged in the national conversation with the Jamaican electorate and the broader citizenry about A, how we have performed, and B, what we plan to do in the very near future. I think thus far, I'm certainly comfortable. The party is feeling comfortable about the way that conversation is progressing with the electorate. And, we look forward to them being able to exercise their franchise. I mean, it's good for a young democracy, as Jamaica is to be able to conduct itself in a particular manner. And I'm, happy with the way our campaign is going so far. I'll start there.
Okay, great. Damion, you are on the trail, literally. Tell us what the atmosphere on the ground is like and what's going on with the People's National Party in light of what Matthew has just said.
Oh, the atmosphere is one of general excitement. I think that the populace is ready to get rid of the Jamaica Labour Party, or as the PMP has coined their own term, to sweep them out. And they have been very elated and excited. However, there's also some concern about the risk that they're faced based on the culture of our campaigning and the COVID realities that we're facing a spike. And so there is some perception of risk. However, there's general excitement of the opportunity to remove the Jamaica Labour Party and to implement the People's National Party. And there's a broad agreement with the platform that the PMP has been putting forward as it relates to the plans that we have to increase the people's situation. So we're excited by what we're seeing on the ground.
But
the numbers are also looking good on our side.
What numbers are looking good?
We seem to be holding strong in the seats we have, and we seem to be widening the gap in the seats that we're targeting. So we're looking forward to the party on the night of the 3rd of September.
No, Damion, the polls, historic polls in favour of the Jamaica Labour Party and the Prime Minister Andrew Holness. Now, how does that reconcile with what you just said about the numbers looking good?
It stands well with the history. In the recent history, in 2007, it was assumed that Portia Simpson was a sure victor. She lost. In 2011, it was assumed Andrew Holness, Young People Time, was a sure victor, and he lost. In 2016, the PMP was suggested to be sure of victory, and that wasn't so. And we believe the same result will happen this time. The 2020 elections, the person that the polls are pushing forward will not be the person that the streets, the people, and the communities put forward.
Matthew, how do you respond to Damion? Damion just said that the polls are not going to have any impact on the ultimate result. Do you believe that that is true?
To quote a former chairman of the PNP in 2011, when the JLP wouldn't accept the last poll that had come in from Don Anderson that we would lose, And, we were wrongly cursing the polls at that time. Man who don't like poll, cuss poll, right? The facts are polls aren't done in a vacuum. They aren't done in space. They're done by using scientific proven sampling processes that go into the field, go into the very streets that we campaign, that we walk. And we also, these polls sample people's perception. Now, politics is two things, right? It's the ability to develop perception, and it's the ability to convert that perception into votes on the day, which is a totally different discussion. But certainly the perception and the number of people who perceive the Jamaica Labour Party as the better option, led by Andrew Michael Holness, is significantly more than the PNP. It's also significantly outside of the numbers that would have been experienced in the 2002, 2007, 2011, 2016 elections. We went back further. I saw something posted online which would have given, went back to some of the older polls from Carl Stone. There's never been a 6% spread overcome by a political party for as long as we've had political polls this close to an election. But make no mistake about it, the polls do not put the PNP in a position that allows my friend Damion to be comfortable. I can see it on his face. I can also see it on Sharon's face behind him. So I know there is discomfort with the numbers. However, I know that Damion is also working very hard, along with many other colleagues on the other side.
Damion, are you not coming in? You're allowing Matthew to run away with the thing. Is this what you're going to allow?
No, I have always been respectful in an interview. So when Matthew ends his conversation, I will come in.
I yield, man.
But at the end of the day, the reality of the situation, as we see it, is that we are getting good reviews. I'm particularly pleased with our social media presence. Once upon a time, people used to say Twitter was the Jamaica Labour Party garrison. Now Twitter is a marginal seat, and Facebook remains the People's National Party garrison. So, as I said, I have never been against a poll. I'm a mathematician myself. However, what we're seeing on the ground does not reflect that poll and the methodologies. More recently, there was an election in St. Kitts that one of the same pollsters suggested that the party that would win actually got only one seat. And this is a very, very recent election in St. Kitts. So we're not in a poll debate on methodologies and pollsters and reasons. We're in an election that the people will contribute to. And the people seem to be on our side.
But Damion,
So
you're a mathematician. You're a mathematician.
I'm particularly confident.
Do the math for us, seat by seat. Which seats are the seats that the PNP is targeting, which give you confidence that you will be victorious?
Well, there's a reason for privacy in war. I don't want Matthew to pump all the money that they have in the seats that I mentioned. But I think we're going to be maintaining the 28 seats that we have. I think that we'll be having a party with some of the funds that they are giving away on the 3rd of September.
Matthew, how do you respond to Damion?
Oh, sorry, I'm going to take time with my friend this afternoon. But that doesn't square with our numbers. But one point where I've often agreed with Damion is that the poll that will count is the poll on the day. We're ahead in the polls for perception leading up to that day. The question for our side is our ability to convert that perception and that sentiment into votes in the box on the respective seats. Now, the statistics are what they are. There's no hiding from which seats in Jamaica are marginal and which seats are not marginal. We certainly have 5 seats that we believe would be numerically in the obvious bullseye target for the PNP to go after. As do the PNP have 5 to 10 seats that are in the statistical realm of attack. It doesn't take a political scientist to pick those out. However, what I do know is that our numbers from those constituencies, both from polling and canvassing, and the general feel from our own tours, tell us that we're in pole position, and I'm comfortable with those numbers. Now, as I've become very mindful of, when we debate polls and debate how people feel, It's important to when you're ahead to not be arrogant and to not give the impression that it's a done deal. It's far from a done deal. There's a hell of a lot of work to be done on our side to ensure that there is no slippage and that our message remains consistent and direct, and that we keep the lines of communication open with the people. The PNP, quite rightly, as the party seeking power, is communicating, I think, pretty often, and in a way that, you know, they would have the public would have the conversation with them. It is our job to ensure they're not swayed away from the position that they currently have, which is that the JLP is the best option.
Gentlemen, hold that thought. We're going to take a quick break. Hardline will be right back.
ARC is one of the leading manufacturers and distributors of building materials in Jamaica. We have been serving our global customers and partners, from builders, contractors, interior designers, with innovation leveraging technology, superior quality, service and efficiency for almost 20 years. At ARC, we are committed to ensure that all products are adequately stocked, and by achieving this, we have managed to be one of the premier carriers of the largest inventory in Jamaica.
The following is a paid announcement by the People's National Party.
Small business represents the backbone of our economy, and many have been devastated by the pandemic. Our pledge is to increase funding for small businesses through grants and low-interest loans. New MSMEs will be offered an income tax break for their first 5 years of operation. Let's build a strong business sector for all Jamaicans.
The preceding was a paid announcement by the People's National Party.
The following is a paid announcement by the Jamaica Labour Party.
Fishing is not just a pastime for me. It's my livelihood, and that's how I make my money. So when COVID come, it mashed me up. But the government put in place something for people like me. And I respect that, and if him can do that for me, I know him can help we to build back stronger.
The preceding was a paid announcement by the Jamaica Labour Party.
Welcome back. Thank you for joining us on Hardline. Now, earlier, Minister Matthew Samuda spoke to us about the JLP's ability and aim to convert public perception to votes at the polls. Now, Senator Damion Crawford, what do you have to say about that?
I've seen some of the pronouncements by the Jamaica Labour Party with misleading communication. For example, no new taxes in 4 years, as if people will forget that in 3 months before the quote-unquote 4 years, the same Jamaica Labour Party put a large tax bill on the people. So the people have been taxed and extensively by the Jamaica Labour Party. Just categorizing it within a chronological period will not change the impression and the knowledge. Also, suggesting that there is a low inflation doesn't sit well with the person who used to pay $90,000 for chicken back, now paying $200 for chicken back per pound. And so that is a reality that they will also know. So any list that is presented by the Jamaica Labour Party will be scrutinized by the people with their reality list. And that reality list will tell them that life was better under the People's National Party. Under the last People's National Party, crime was better managed because there was, I think it's over 1,000 more murders in the 4 years the Jamaica Labour Party has been in power than in the 4 years the People's National Party has been in power between 2012 and 2016. The people also recognize that the Jamaica Labour Party has had them under bondage, has removed their freedom with the state of emergency. And very few people will vote to go back into slavery. And so the lack of freedom in the Westmoreland area, the lack of freedom in the St. James area, the lack of freedom in the St. Catherine and the Clarendon areas, without the benefits of a reduction in murders, I believe that the people will vote against that lack of a plan and that lack of sensible actions that the Jamaica Labour Party has been incapable of taking.
Matthew, are you ready for the rebuttal?
Absolutely. So there's some unfortunate statistics that my mathematician friend can't ignore. The facts are, in 2016 February, unemployment rates had gone to 13.8%. Youth unemployment was nearing 40%. poverty was well over 20%. When we fast forward to where we would have been, certainly in March of this year, unemployment rates had dropped to 7.2%, the lowest ever. More persons employed, better employment for females, better employment for youth than we had ever seen in this country. That's the statistical facts. Now, the other statistic, and though I wish we could get to the stage where these numbers would come out in a more current fashion, the latest living survey from 2018 showed a 40% reduction in the poverty rate in this country, actually. Now, the fundamental target of any government has to be to improve the lives of its citizens. In a small island developing state like ours, poverty reduction has to be at the forefront of your interest. Now, the discussion on national security is one me and Damion fundamentally disagree on. But there are, however, some statistics that we cannot continue to ignore. The facts are the state of emergency measures have borne fruit in the areas that they're being used. It also has significantly reduced, and I would say has started the process of removing the cancer in Western Jamaica that we saw prevailing and taking shape. As early, and I found it this morning, as early as November 2014, there were calls for the use of states of emergency in St. James based on the increases in murders that we were seeing then. And one of the numbers that the opposition doesn't like to discuss is the fact that every quarter since the last quarter in 2014, serious and violent crime numbers increased. The fact is, in the last year of the PNP administration, there was a 20% increase in the number of murders. That was the year that the famous divine intervention speech was made, which, and I agree, the Lord has blessed this nation, and it should never be an issue to ask for his help and his support.
Damion, how do you respond to that?
People, however, let's make no bones about it that things were not going well, and the numbers and the trajectory were headed in the wrong direction.
Every single year of the Jamaica Labour Party's administration has had a worse crime performance than the worst year of the People's National Party administration. In fact, there was no simple trend of either direction up or down under the PNP's government. It would have been up, then down, because our responsiveness would have been put into place. But the worst year of the PNP's administration in the variable of crime, in particular murder, has been better than the best year of the Jamaica Labour Party's administration. More importantly, one must note that the reality can often be different from the statistics based on how the statistics is garnered. We know that unemployment can be manipulated by things like, for example, the HOPE program, because it is, are you employed at the time of data taking? So usually the JLP will go out in the road to make some bushing program, etc. But the people on the ground knows that they were only employed for a week. The people on the ground knows that in spite of the argument that unemployment is going down dramatically, more recently, poverty was up just up to last year, two functions ago. So it is difficult to analyze and understand how unemployment reduced but poverty increased. So therefore, those statistics and the reality are not matching. And the people will come to that understanding because they cannot say it for themselves, I am no longer unemployed. They can't say for the people around them that they are no longer unemployed. They can't say for themselves that I am no longer poor. And they can't say for the people that they know that they are no longer poor. And no piece of paper, whether black, white, or green, can suggest to a man who is still in poverty, who is still unemployed, who is still facing crime and criminal activity to a greater extent, and who has not been given any prosperity nor opportunity to progress, to say that this is a better government.
Matthew?
And there's a fundamental flaw in that argument, because the perception measure, which the best perception measure that we have, and I'll yield if someone can suggest to me a better one, is still the use of polls. And the polls suggest that the people do not agree with Damion. He is, however, wrong about one particular statistic. The last published living survey, standard of living survey in Jamaica shows a 40% reduction of poverty, Damion, bringing it down to 12, I don't remember the exact 12-point incident, but 12 percentage point down from 19 or 18, whatever it was, right? But that's a fact. That's not debatable. Now, what the argument should be, Damion, quite frankly, and what the argument should be from the PNP, because we don't need to dispute statistics, is very simply, can I move the country from 12 to 6 and how fast can I do it? But ignoring the fact that the JLP moved it from 19 to 12% in terms of the poverty rate is not being genuine. The other point to make is that knocking the whole program which engaged unattached youth, not just in activities for employment, but in significant training activities and in significant activities to assist them in integrating with the society in a better fashion is really quite unfortunate. It is the same way that you would say, well, if your unemployment numbers were at 13.8%, when you claim you had 60,000 people employed in G, cleaning, drain, and bushing things for a week at a time, then the real unemployment numbers then at your time, Damion, would have been closer to 20%.
Damion, how do you respond?
It cannot be denied that whatever social changes the Jamaica government has enjoyed has in the main been provided by the People's National Party. So therefore, the fact of the matter is that we know that we have changed the lives of the people. If you want to change the statistics, that's fine, because the ultimate poll is going to be on the 3rd of September, when the people decide which of the two platforms they're willing to support. And we believe that the next election, on the 3rd of September, the people will select the People's National Party platform, which has always been historically, presently, and in the future, the party for the people.
Gentlemen, wrap-up question. Matthew, starting with you. You're two young people. That's why it was very important to have you have this conversation. Regardless of whether young persons are PMP or JLP or JLP or PMP, they must vote, correct? Now, what charge would you give, Matthew, to the young people watching who are considering casting their ballot?
Well, I would say to them, look at history, look at present, and look at the future. The facts are that largely the debt burden that we face, that we've had to spend the last 10 years coming out of, was created between the years 1997 and 2003. They can go online and they can look at the Caprice study that would have spoken to that. I've never heard that rebutted as something to be untrue by any across the aisle. That's the fact. 70% of the debt burden that we would have had was created during that period. When you look at what that debt burden created by underinvestment in our infrastructure, in our services, and in our people, several of the challenges we have as a developing state are because of the choices of the former People's National Party administration. In fact, it was under their tenure that we moved from 300 murders to a state of total insecurity of 1,600 murders, while their president now was Minister of National Security in Peter Phillips, when we became the murder capital of the world. When you contrast that against where we are now, where you look at the 4 years of the Jamaica Labour Party and you look at the significant investments in infrastructure, you look at the significant investments in housing, in new classrooms, in new health centers, when we think about the investments in our people, we think about the facts that we honored our promises with the restructuring of taxes. We honored our promises and created over 80,000 new jobs. I will tell you quite frankly, vote for the team with the better record, A, and B, look out for our plan, which is coming in a matter of days, which I think the country will be quite happy with. And even Damion is considering voting for us. So he's considering voting for us.
Damion?
Well, yeah, there are many Damions out there, but the fact of the matter is that if I should agree with Matthew that you should look at the better performance, then you'll definitely vote for the People's National Party. You'll vote for the person in Dr. Peter Phillips, who was awarded the Man of the Year because he had carried the Jamaican economy to a place that the Jamaica Labour Party has decided was impossible, having failed 4 IMF tests. You'll recognize that we are actually heading back into a situation that we would need to be saved by a person who is actually experienced and have done it before because of the COVID crisis, and in some ways the mismanagement of the COVID crisis leading to a second spike based on letting in all these visitors, based on not being able to track people and all of these things. But if you look at performance, you'd recognize that the 3 miles and the Constant Spring does not compare to the North-South Highway and the Highway 2000. So infrastructure, the JLP cannot compete, cannot compare with what the People's National Party has done. In fact, if I was playing poker, I would say, Matthew, I see your 3 miles and I raise you Highway 2000. I see your few houses and I raise you Portmore. I see the things that you have said and I raise you the things that we have done. And in this case, when you're all in, you will lose the vote, you will lose the pot, and you will lose the cash on the 3rd of September.
And I see your optimism and pray for your depression, which is coming, my brother.
God. Gentlemen, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. And we wish you both well, both of you. The Jamaica Labour Party's Matthew Samuda, Minister of Government, proud of you. And Senator Damion Crawford, the first Vice President of the People's National Party. That's a big deal too. This is Hardline. Don't move a muscle.
One of our most prized departments is our lumber treatment plant. It is one of the most modern and state-of-the-art treatment facilities for lumber in the entire Caribbean. Our lumber is bought in raw form. They are then carefully loaded into a pressurized cylinder where it is treated with special chemicals. After the internal treatment process is completed, the lumber is transferred from the cylinder to the drip pad where it sits to be naturally dried. Our plant has the capacity to treat 50 million board feet of lumber annually. Not only do we treat our own lumber, we also offer lumber treatment to our valued customers.
The following is a paid announcement by the Jamaica Labour Party.
Fishing is not just a pastime for me. It's my livelihood and that's how I make my money. So when COVID come, it mashed me up. But the government put in place something for people like me. And I respect that. And if him can do that for me, I know him can help we to build back stronger.
The proceeding was a paid announcement by the Jamaica Labour Party.
The following is a paid announcement by the People's National Party.
Water is essential for my life and yours. The PMP's pledge to you is to undertake a massive upgrade of current water channels, treatment, storage and supply networks, creating universal access to water to every home, both in urban and especially rural communities. We will allocate a monthly $1,000 credit towards all your water bills. Water gives us all dignity. We're building a Jamaica for all Jamaica.
The proceeding was a paid announcement by the People's National Party.
Joining us now on Hardline is the Attorney General, the Member of Parliament for St. James, West Central, Mrs. Malahoo-Forte, Marlene Malahoo-Forte. AG, thank you so much. You know that I'm your constituent. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, give us an on-the-ground perspective. We really want to know what's happening. The Prime Minister has called the election at a time when the country was unsure as to whether we were going to focus on the economy or go straight into it. What are your thoughts?
So the calling of the election is not to the exclusion of focusing on the economy. The government has to settle down. We are at a point in the parliamentary cycle where persons have elections on their mind, lots of distraction taking place. So in order for the Prime Minister to do what needs to be done, he weighed what he had to weigh and he called the election precisely because of the work that is ahead of us. Not only in the economy, but right across the country.
And what does that work entail in the context of COVID?
In the context of COVID, it's about building back stronger, building back in a more resilient way. As you know, there are so many persons who live around the tourism and the tourism product who have been impacted. And the decisions that impact them are not decisions that are taken entirely in Jamaica. In fact, it's a minuscule amount of what happened here. Countries have closed their borders, people are not able to come in, governments have had to focus on dealing with containment of the disease right across the globe. And it's just a knock-on effect. It's a pandemic. It's not just one country that is suffering, but it's the entire world.
Let's get local now, AG. Let's take it to your constituency and the parish of St. James. We were down there last week and you know, people are suffering because the tourism industry has collapsed. What are the remedial things that you see that we can do as a country to help these people, these Jamaicans?
You're right. I mean, those whose livelihood depend primarily on tourism have been impacted. And it is hard for many of them. I see it and I hear it every day. You know, the government had done the CARE program, and that can go so far and no further. But it's also about balancing the decisions that we have control over to ensure that persons are not more severely impacted than they are. it's about building back in a more resilient way. It's about building back stronger. Jamaica has done extremely well in the approach we have taken for the containment of the COVID, to the point where the rest of the world has looked at us. As Attorney General, I was invited by the Commonwealth Secretariat to share with the rest of the Commonwealth the legal framework that we took. COVID and the rule of law, how we managed through, how we have struck the balance of saving lives and livelihoods at the same time. So what the people need to know is that although COVID was an unprecedented event with so many uncertainties, the way the Andrew Holness-led government has managed it is a clear demonstration of our capacity to deal with the most devastating of events.
But AG, what about the backlog in testing? What about the fact that persons have been tested? I saw one person post today on Twitter that they had been tested weeks ago upon arrival in Jamaica and they have not yet received the result. Don't we have those deficiencies that we're not really speaking about as a people or even the government?
We do have systemic issues, so there is no doubt about it. We have capacity constraint. The demand on the resources far exceed what is available. To the best of my knowledge, the Ministry of Health has been upfront about the issues that they have experienced, the delays in providing the results, and have made it known. But not everybody listens to every medium through which the information is disseminated. But make no mistake, even countries that are better off than Jamaica have had worse setback than we have had, not only in testing, but across many other areas in handling the pandemic.
We heard very early on, before the campaign theme kind of switched to recovery, that one good term deserves another. Why does your term deserve another?
You know, I have been very faithful to the commitments I have made to the people in my constituency. If we take the issue of infrastructure, for example, I inherited a road network so deplorable. You go into the communities and people find it very hard. I remember when I came to the constituency and I was in the community of Guava Walk, there was a murder there and no emergency vehicle could reach the victims or relatives of the victims because of the road. And that was the one infrastructure I staked my representation on. Go and see for yourself what has happened. But in the meantime, I've been able, through successful representation, to have road work done on 48 roads and counting. And they're all there for everyone to see. And even as much of that has been done, it's still a drop in the bucket of what needs to be done. Water issue. Do you know that St. James manufactures 15 million gallons of water every day at the Great River plant?
Really?
And yet there are communities where people cannot find running water in their homes when they turn on their tap.
Is that a new campaign promise?
No, I have already, through my representation, added 550,000 gallons of storage with new tanks in Moy Hall, in Unity Hall, in Westgate Hills, in Granville, and in Pitford. Some of the connections have been made and others are being done, ensuring that the pumps are in place on the infrastructure side. There is so much work to be done. And what needs to be done can't be done in one term, because by the time you go through the bureaucracy, the non-political side of government, you would have gone sometimes up to a year. So part of dealing with what needs to be done is also to ensure that the systems and the processes are as efficient and effective as possible, because the term is only 5 years and in many cases 4 or less.
AG,
so a lot that has been done, a whole lot. More than people could imagine. But I'm not an MP who's about the fluff and the show. I work quietly without fanfare, and the people see the results on the ground.
Thank you so much, Attorney General of Jamaica and the candidate, current MP, Mrs. Marlene Malahoo-Forte. Thank you very much, madam. We appreciate it. COVID-19 has upended the world. A world in crisis, and consequently, we are a nation in crisis. Therefore, are you about the recovery or are you for the rescue? Thankfully, the Director of Elections has assured us as Jamaicans that as long as we observe the COVID protocols, we should be safe enough to go out and cast our ballots. Even in the most difficult times, we have to exercise our franchise and vote with our conscience. We have the right to choose who we vote for, and a duty to our country and to ourselves to vote according to our own will. It's time to move away from the partisan politics. Some politicians have said that we need a new Jamaica. Other politicians have said that we need a better Jamaica. I leave you with the spirit of Guyanese poet Martin Carter. This is a dark time, my love. Everywhere the faces of men are strained and anxious. If you see me looking at your hands, listening when you speak, marching in your ranks, you must know that I do not sleep to dream, but dream to change the world. I'll see you next Sunday at 6 p.m. on Hardline. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for staying with us. Be safe out there. And please remember to wear your mask and wash your hands and cast your vote. Have a good evening, everybody.
Hardline with Ashley Ann. One of our most prized departments is our lumber treatment plant. It is one of the most modern and state-of-the-art treatment facilities for lumber in the entire Caribbean. Our lumber is bought in raw form. They are then carefully loaded into a pressurized cylinder where it is treated with special chemicals. After the internal treatment process is completed, the lumber is transferred from the cylinder to the drip pad where it sits to be naturally dried. Our plant has the capacity to treat 50 million board feet of lumber annually. Not only do we treat our own lumber, we also offer lumber treatment to our valued customers.
The following is a paid announcement by the Jamaica Labour Party.
I've dedicated my life to serving the people of Jamaica, and my greatest pleasure is to see the transformation of someone's life directly linked to a policy of the government. I get many letters from people all over. But one letter from a young man moved me almost to tears. Dear Prime Minister, I want to
thank you for giving us young people hope under the HOPE program. I left high school 5 years now with no subject and just could not find anything to do. I saw you on TV talking about the HOPE program. I signed up for the program. Today, I can do tailoring and I work with a company making uniforms. I am looking to start a business in fashion designing. The whole program saved my life.
Keep on doing it for the youths.
The proceeding was a paid announcement by the Jamaica Labour Party.
The following is a paid announcement by the People's National Party.
Building your Kingston, building Clarendon, building your Central, Portland to Westmoreland. St. Bess, building St. Catherine, yes. St. Mary now get left, and over to the west. Building up St. James, St. Thomas have the wave. Building Manchester name, Trelawney we are clear. Hey. Building your Jamaica, PNP does a build it up. Building your Jamaica, PNP does a build it up, build it up, build it up. Hospital and school farmer plant. We are built Jamaica for me and you.
The proceeding was a paid announcement by the People's National Party.